concern, but probably the number one most unfounded concern that we deal with in our world. This doesn't happen.
Okay, we're in Santa Barbara here, and the house on the average is about $1 million in the southern part of the town.
Yep.
So what's a realistic expectation in terms of non-refundable deposits for someone in the $1 million market?
Same thing. It's gonna be 5 to 10%. You're not gonna do a deal unless a buyer's got that much skin in the game. So obviously you're looking for a minimum down payment amount of $50,000 to $100,000. But if you're a buyer that's out there looking at $1 million price point, chances are you're going to have some money that you're able to put down. It's not a financial reason that you're most likely not able to walk into the bank. A lot of banks are rejecting people right now because they're self-employed. It might be a business owner that needs to show, an additional year or two of verifiable income, but they've got liquid, or they're liquid enough that they can put that money down, because keep in mind, they're getting dollar for dollar credit off that as well. And when they go to get their financing, this shows up on the HUD statement as a partial down payment. So depending on the loan package that they're gonna get at the point of financing, let's say that they were buying that $1 million house, and whatever conventional loan was requiring 20% down, but they put 10% down up front when they went through our program, they're only gonna be on the hook and responsible for that second 10%. That 10% that they put down up front gets full credit on the HUD. Yes?
So is it just a basic sandwich lease option program? I mean, is that kind of what you're doing right now?
I wouldn't call it a sandwich lease. It's an absolute lease purchase. So this is a structured agreement to buy the home from day one.
So it's structured to buy it in your company name, whatever that is, and then resold to the end buyer, right? So that way you can collect the payments?
So, well, we're not always collecting monthly cash flow. So there's about 4 or 5 different ways where we can profit on each and every one of these deals. And I've got a slide that's coming up down the way here. But what we're doing is, at that point, is we're assigning away our interest. So if I'm not cash flowing, there's no reason for me to stay in the deal. I'm simply taking my non-refundable down payment or my fee up front, and then I am gluing the buyer and the seller together with a very secure document.
So you're out of the deal after you get paid.
Right.
So you're just creating your own structure.
In most cases, if I'm cash flowing, I've got to stay in there, because I've got to collect those payments each and every month.
Do you pay
Have
them
some-
the equivalent?
Yeah.
How much is the lease payment?
Correlated based on price point of the house. So you're just going to look at rent market, basically. So the good thing about this for the seller is that our buyers, a couple different things, they don't have a lot of leverage. Very little haggling on the front end as far as, making offers. Most of the time they're able to get, obviously it has to appraise. They can't have some pie in the sky number out there, because no bank is going to loan on more than appraised value. So it has to comp out. But there's not a lot of haggling on the front end. The monthly payment is going to be dictated by the rental market. So if you know that based on that price point, they could command a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 rent, that's what determines that. Yes, sir.
Does your company guarantee that the mortgage will always get paid?
We do not. I can't guarantee anything that I can't personally stand behind. I will not make those payments. But what I would tell you, Mr. Seller, is A, they're not going to default, otherwise they stand to lose 100% of that down payment. B, you have not lost title of the home, so you've still retained that asset, even if we're looking at worst case scenarios. But what I would tell you I would do for you is I would take it out to the market, I would find another buyer, bring them to the table, have the same down payment requirement. They would begin making monthly payments if we're looking at worst case scenarios and the first buyer defaulted. So ultimately what you're able to do, and that's not what we want each buyer to be successful, but you ultimately have collected a second down payment and have not lost control over your assets. So if you're looking at worst case scenarios, that would be it.
We just had that happen before.
Did you?
We take it back one day.
Yeah, it's like, there's car dealerships out there that they love to repo cars. They can sell the same car 10 times. That's not what this business model is, and that's not what we're looking for. But if we're talking about worst case scenarios, that would be it.
I use the term down payment, but in actuality, it's a non-refundable deposit. Am I wrong?
Depending on the state, yeah. So some states specifically, it's a non-refundable deposit. Some you have to call it an option deposit. Some it is a non-refundable down payment. It is state specific. but you're not off base there.
What is it in California?
It is a deposit, non-refundable deposit.
Well, it depends on how you sell a property. You sell it on a lease purchase, or you're gonna sell with a client, with owner finance.
Well, we don't do any of the owner financing deals. This is strictly lease purchase.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, the sweet spot. So part of our training will be showing you how to identify houses in the sweet spot. So obviously that fluctuates based on the market. In Jacksonville, Florida, our sweet spot is $150,000 to $500,000. We do some that are a little bit higher than that, obviously, but they're looking at kind of a pyramid of buyers. Obviously, the lower price points, there's going to be more buyers that can ultimately get a mortgage at that, and the higher price points you go, fewer buyers are going to be out there. Santa Barbara is obviously a little bit of a different animal. We've also done this in high-end areas like Chicago, for example, which obviously has higher property values. But here, the sweet spot's going to be a little bit higher than that, but when we come into that training, we're going to be armed with all that information based on our market analysis on what we think that target market should be, and it will certainly be a range there. A couple deals that have happened recently. This is one of our students down in Jacksonville. She had this under contract for, I think, less than a month, $15,000 profit, $232,000 house. So our lease purchase platform review. So what we do, guys, is very simple. We match buyers. So we're looking for buyers that can afford a mortgage but can't walk into the bank today. Then we are looking for sellers that are typically looking for full retail. They've got the ability to be flexible in their approach to selling their house. And in exchange for that flexibility, we show them how to ultimately make more money on the sale of the home. Just keep in mind, selling this way versus selling traditionally, they stand to make between 11 and 14% more if they're able to wait for a predetermined amount of time. And again, we know that time frame up front to get cashed out. Is everyone clear on that?
So for your operation, it's a year to 18 months, is that correct?
Again, it's unique to each individual buyer, but 90% of our buyers fall within a 6-month to 18-month window. So again, sellers can't sell their home, get more money for home, quicker sale. Our average sales cycle is about 45 days. So in a lot of the markets we're in, the average days on market is closer to 6 months. Santa Barbara is obviously a little bit different. Every market is a little bit different, but our sales cycle is about 45 days. Then we've got buyers who can't qualify today. We help provide them with a bridge or that stepping stone to their permanent financing. And then we get paid, or you get paid, a minimum of $10,000 plus per deal. This is a deal I did down there. I had it put it under contract on a Tuesday. I had put a bandit sign out on a Friday, or bandit signs out on a Friday, wrote the offer on Saturday, closed about 2 weeks later on it, and made $32,000 on it. How much did it cost me to get that house under contract? $0.
Where'd you get the lead?
It was a FISBO.
Okay.
And we'll show you guys how to identify all the different potential sellers on that.
And was that sign more than just on the property itself, it was on other properties in the surrounding area?
Just right there. So I put a bandit sign I put 4 bandit signs within a mile of the subject property. Got a call on it that night, showed it the next day, first showing. Interesting gentleman, put $30,000 down. We were under contract at $399.9. Based on comparables in that market, we knew that the market would bear $429.9. We had $30,000 to put down, and we kept the first month's payment, which I'll show you the different ways to make money with this system. So we netted $32.8 in less than 3 weeks.
So it sounds like bandit signs are bringing in more than any kind of social media marketing or internet.
We do all of it. So we do heavy online advertising. A lot of the markets that we're in, we do billboards, we do television, we do radio. But grassroots guerrilla marketing like bandit signs is something that really just makes the phones ring for us. Obviously, the difficulty with that is the quality of the buyer is not necessarily phenomenal. I would say on bandit signs, about 8 or 9 out of every 10 phone calls we get is not a potential candidate for us because they don't have the down payment requirement. That is what excludes most of our buyers 8 or 9 times out of 10, is they simply don't have the skin in the game. If they don't have the skin in the game, they're not a potential fit for us today. Grow potentially.
That's probably because there wasn't enough information on the side, because you can only put so much on the side.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We're just trying to build our database. They might not be a candidate today, but once we explain to them how to buy this way down the road, they can save money up. We're looking for customers, obviously, long-term as well.
You hit on a key point. Most people are scared to put abandoned signs. Everything I've sold has been abandoned signs.
Yeah.
Every single, 75 deals.
Yeah,
Every single one is abandoned signs.
yeah.
So don't be afraid to put those up. You get a fine, you get a fine.
Yeah, and, yeah,
Is
it's
that
the cost.
Santa Barbara?
Yeah, I'll Santa Barbara everywhere. Yeah, I can call the bandit police, call me.
We
I'll take it
get,
down.
we get it too, it's the cost of doing business, it's
Yeah.
one of those things.
It's one of those.
Some of our areas that we can get permits, but obviously at the end of the day, you know, any given weekend, we'll put about 600 bandit signs out in Jacksonville, so.
They actually allowed you to do a permit.
What's that?
They actually allowed you to do a permit to put bandit signs up.
On a certain percentage of that, we probably have about 60 or 70% of our bandit signs that go out there unpermitted, because they will only sell you so many. And then, obviously, every week, we've got the sign police that shows up with a
Take it
nice
down.
couple tickets for us, but we're volume-based, so we understand that we're gonna have to pay some fines like that, and that's just cost of doing business with us.
A couple of questions. Well, first of all, from what I can gather, most of the sellers are gonna be FISBOs, right?
FISBOs is probably 80% of our demographic, yeah. Could be tired landlords, you know, it's been a rental property, vacant homes, those are probably gonna be the best demographic for you. FISBOs is obviously great for this. It's a retail-based seller, you know, based on the fact that they're selling their own, they most likely are trying to avoid paying a real estate commission. It's a really strong indicator that they wanna make as much off the sale of their home as possible, which is why they're selling it themselves. So, yeah, that's a great target.
And second question, as far as where we come in, or where you come in, is there, do you use a real estate attorney for your contract?
Every single deal. We will not close a deal without a real estate attorney.
Would you use one in California?
I would use one in everywhere we've done them. We have not done a single closing on any deal in any market that we're in without one.
Is your company in California now?
We are currently not, nope, that's why we're here. Prior to our training, our real estate attorney, we will have someone on retainer here locally that will craft specific documents to California law. We'll come armed with those.
So you don't use a title company at all?
I mean, you could, yeah. As far as the escrow company, the only thing that we use an escrow company for is we've got one that actually streamlines the payments from the buyer to the seller to avoid the equity skimming that I mentioned earlier. So this company that we enlist, they debit the buyer's account to make payment on the first of every month. If there's an underlying mortgage, the first thing they do is satisfy that payment. And for $15, they will actually deposit any type of cash flow either into our account or into the seller's account at the same time. So they'll make actually 2 deposits, one of which being the mortgage. That's the first thing to get satisfied to avoid equity skimming.
What is equity skimming?
So equity skimming would be if you were to sell your house this way and you've got a buyer that's making on-time payments to you every single month, but then you're not turning around and paying your mortgage company. So the buyer is doing what they're contracted to do with you and making those on-time payments every month, but the seller isn't turning around and satisfying their mortgage. So then 8 months down the road, they get a knock on the door from the sheriff saying, you've got to move out, obviously, you know, the mortgage is going into foreclosure, but the buyer has been making the payments all along. So in order to protect our buyers, we enlist this third-party service to make sure that the mortgage is being satisfied. We also have a covenant in every single agreement that we put together where upon the buyer's request, and they may not all do it, they can request an updated mortgage statement once a quarter for the same reason, peace of mind. Did you have a question?
You just answered it, you read my mind.
Okay.
Some people's minds are an open book.
Again, guys, why should sellers do this? So we provide sellers another viable option to sell their home more rapidly. We're almost always able to maximize the amount of money the seller will receive. They make more money, and it's a non-traditional or unconventional way to sell their home. The average seller makes between 11% and 14% more through our unique lease purchase program. That does not even count the aggregate of the monthly payments. So if we've got a seller that has a $5,000 monthly payment coming into them, and they don't have an underlying mortgage and they're free and clear, how quickly does that math add up in their favor, since the buyer is not getting credit for those monthly payments? Now, there's gonna be some taxes and insurance, obviously, they're gonna come out of each one of those, but if you're a free and clear seller, the math is so powerful, that's why they're willing to do it this way. Even if you've got an underlying mortgage, someone else is servicing your debt each and every month. So every month as your loan schedule is amortizing, you're getting additional equity, but the buyer is not getting credit for those monthly payments. So the math's not quite as strong, obviously, as if it's a free and clear seller, but still very powerful.
If they're saving 5 to 6% for the real estate commission, what's the rest of that?
Yeah, so typically, and we could argue this, and it's different in every market, but a national rule of thumb for sale price versus asking price is about 95%. So on average, if someone's trying to sell their house for $100,000, they'll most likely take an offer of about $95,000. Obviously, that scales up with higher price points, and that's an approximate, guys. We could probably make an argument for that either way. If they've got a listing agent and obviously the buyer's got an agent, there's a 6%. Even if they're a FSBO and they are offering a co-broke, which means you're not gonna list my house, but if you bring me a buyer, I'll pay you a 3% commission. That would make it just 3%. So that's the discrepancy between 11 and 14, is whether or not they're a FSBO and a buyer agent brings a buyer to the table and they're paying a 3% co-broke, or they're paying a 6% if they've got a traditional listing. The other 3% is almost every, and I don't remember the last time I didn't see a buyer's request for a seller to contribute their closing costs in order to consummate the sale. Now, the seller doesn't have to do it, but a lot of loans these days are based on the fact that the seller, if they don't contribute the 3% closing costs for the buyer, the loan will not be approved. There's a lot of those that are out there right now. So that's what makes up the 11 to 14. Does that make sense to you?
And that's probably actually a little low because you're not counting in holding costs either.
Yeah, exactly, not counting holding costs. So these are approximates, guys. I mean, we could make an argument for one point either way or the other, but 11 to 14% is a pretty good general rule of thumb. Buyer benefits. So people say, well, why would a buyer buy this way? A buyer enjoys home during the lease period. So they're moving into a forever or a long-term home that's executive level, and they're able to get into it today versus having to wait for them to be able to get approved at a bank. They've got time to qualify for a mortgage again while they're living in that house. They can rebuild the credit. They've got time to sell another home. So some of our buyers, they're not able to walk into a bank because their debt to income ratio will not support a second mortgage. So they might not have bad credit. They might be in phenomenal shape, other than the fact that the house that they've been living in or occupying and they're trying to move on with their lives has been unable to sell, which is very common out there these days. Another huge benefit for them is that they're able to lock in their price today. So the buyer gets any benefit of appreciation in the market because they're locking in a strike price now. So if the price does appreciate over that lease term, the buyer gets built-in equity. Be trained to find the qualified sellers and buyers with our proven step-by-step system. Show you all of our marketing, show you how to identify the buyers, show you how to identify the sweet spots, several different lead sources on how to find those sellers. We get full disclosure and full transparency to the seller. We don't hurt the seller's bottom line because we mark our fee up above and beyond what they're trying to sell it for, so it does not affect their receivable. And we tell them that on the very first phone call. So one of the coolest things, at least I think it's cool, and that you guys will, it kind of blows people's minds sometimes, is that we've got a very unique script. And it's not the one-page script that says, if yes, then say this, if no, then say that, and then hang up the phone. Our script, in many cases, if it's a good phone call, can take 15 to 20 minutes to get through. We are very transparent. We lay it all on the line, including our fee, which when we have people, we've got a training facility in our office down in Jacksonville where other investors come in. to train right in our office, and they say, well, I wanted to come down here just to see if, you know, if you were lying about making the $10,000 and you were actually telling the seller that up front. It's in our script. Within the first 5 minutes on that phone call, we're letting these sellers know, A, how we make our money, and B, what that amount is. Don't you think that places a lot of value on yourself if you're telling a seller, listen, this is not going to affect your bottom line, but I'm going to make $10,000, or I'm going to make $50,000, or I'm going to make $30,000 on the sale of your home. A lot of what we do has a lot of psychology in it with our scripting, and there's a lot of posturing, and that's part of it right there. We want to get out in front of it. Let the sellers know up front, I'm going to make money on the sale of your home, I'm going to bring a lot of value to the table, and I'm ultimately going to help you get what you want as well. We can all win in this situation, not only us, but the seller and the buyer alike. Benefits to the seller, they're able to get a higher price on the property, very little leverage for the buyer. I would say probably if the house is priced right, about 7 or 8 out of every 10 deals we do is a full price offer. They retain title the entire time. It's very important, changes it from a potential foreclosure to just a simple eviction. And they've got full approval on any buyer we like to work with. So all we're trying to do with these sellers is let us have the ability to take their house out to our market and try and bring a buyer to the table. There's only 4 variables involved in a formal offer that we're going to present to them. 1 is going to be the asking price. 2 is going to be the monthly payment. 3 is going to be the term or the length of time that they need to get financing in place. And 4 is going to be the down payment amount. So every single time we present a formal offer, the seller is going in with eyes wide open. If they don't like the terms, they reject the offer. And again, and we're going to harp on this throughout the training as well, timeline is based solely on the buyer's time frame for financing. We want the shortest term possible. Most people want their cash out right away. If they're willing to wait for a predetermined amount of time, obviously we're able to show them how to make more money on it. But there's no open-ended or arbitrary terms. The more time you give someone, and this sounds very skeptical, the more time you give someone, the more likely something will go wrong in their life. And that is a fact, guys.
Divorce, whatever.
Lost job, divorce, they got sick. You know, I mean, there's obviously, none of us are devoid of curveballs. So we want to have a structured term up front that is given to us from a third-party source. We're not dictating the term. A lender is dictating the term based on that buyer's ability to get financing. If the lender tells us they only need 12 months, how much time do you think we give them?
13.
We want to set them up for success, so we don't give them any less time they need. But the reality is we want to incentivize them to get their financing as soon as possible, so we're certainly not going to give them any more time than they need either.
I'm gonna be checking on them in 6 months to see if they're right there at it.
We don't have to do it. That's what that lender, that's what the mortgage readiness program does for us. We don't even have to touch them. They're touching them each and every month. And who's paying for that? The buyer. It doesn't cost us a dime. Seller gets a higher price on property, retained title, shortest term possible. Why sellers love this? And it is a exit strategy in place from day one. So a lease option, and we all have either done them or kind of know what those are. That's a test drive, guys. That is, hey, I'm going to put some sort of nominal option deposit down, $2,500, $5,000, certainly not enough to glue me to the deal. I'm going to test drive your house for a year. At the end of that term, if I don't want it, here's your keys back. No penalty to me. That is not what this is. This is a buying agreement from day one with sufficient skin in the game from the buyer that binds them to the contract. Non-refundable. Again, no real estate commission. Typically get the seller close to asking price, and we only have a 45 to 60-day sales cycle. So we're also not trying to lock up their asset for any terribly long period of time. That's not like a listing agreement, which on average are about 6 months. We're only asking the seller to give us 45 to 60 days to perform. Yes, sir.
Do you have a particular lender that seems to be qualifying these people more more so than others, or you just couldn't get in and out?
Now, at the end of the day, they can get their mortgage from whoever they want if they've got a relationship with the bank, but who we hook them up with, will ultimately write the paper if they want to, if the buyer wants to, but they're not beholden to anyone. We mandate the credit repair and mandate the mortgage readiness program so that we know that they're following the right path, but when they are ready to get financing, they can use a bank of their choosing. We don't have a dog in that fight. Buyer has contract to buy the house and skid in the game prior to taking occupancy, which glues into the house again. All money, all proceeds, all profit is realized up front. Every dime that we make, with a few exceptions, we get prior to the buyer moving in. Any money that is due to the seller prior to the buyer moving in is distributed at that soft closing as well. Direct deposit into account, so there's no collection responsibilities for the seller. In some cases, we do stay in the deal all the way to financing, which I know is your question, or might have been yours. If we're cash flowing the property, obviously we need to stay in that to make sure that we're getting our cash flow each and every month. There's also no landlording responsibility for the seller. So these sellers don't want to have a $500,000 or $1 million asset, and then all of a sudden they're on the hook and getting phone calls at midnight about leaky faucets. All that they're required to do via this contract is warranty the major mechanical systems for 30 days. HVAC, electric, plumbing, roof, if there's a pool equipment. After that 30th day, 100% of all repair, upkeep, and ongoing maintenance falls on the buyer.
Okay, and that warranty personally or through a company?
They have to warranty it personally. Yeah. And a lot of the sellers that we work with, just to protect their asset, will either keep a home warranty in place, or will actually go out and purchase it in some instances. That way there's just, obviously a small deductible, but the buyer's responsible after that 30th day. Screening process, due diligence on a buyer prior to presenting a formal offer. That is the absolute key to the success of our program, is the time and the money that is spent screening our buyers. We're not looking for the golden goose. Our sellers want to sell, they want to get cashed out. So it is imperative that we send each buyer through this lender and mortgage readiness program, and we know exactly who we're dealing with, exactly why they can't walk into the bank, and what that timeline is. You hit the nail on the head. That's the absolute hardest thing in real estate investing if you're doing either traditional or non-traditional real estate, is verifying income, taking the buyer through the screening process. So we mandate and list a third-party service that specializes in that. That way it's not a guessing game for us. We don't pretend to be the experts. Not on that. Multiple ways we profit. So the non-refundable deposit, typically 5 to 10% of the sale price, dispersed prior to occupancy. The only seller's fee to us is we collect that first month's payment. All subsequent payments are made directly to them through that direct deposit. So that is profit center number 2. We're taking the deposit or the down payment from the buyer that's above and beyond the asking price, and then we're collecting that first month's payment. By virtue of the price points that we're dealing with, particularly here, that's a sizable chunk of money. I mean, you're talking anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 in addition to the down payment. That's the seller's only fee to us. And keep in mind, if they were paying even a co-broke of 3%, that amount's going to be much higher than just conceding that first month's payment. We can also cash flow. So if we've got a seller that had a good interest rate and their monthly payment is $2,500, but we know based on that price point in that area that the rent market would bear $3,500. We just carved out $1,000 in positive cash flow every month for ourselves. Now, our business in Jacksonville, we have made a strategic decision not to do that as often. We would rather sweeten the pot for the seller and give them not only the debt service, but that positive cash flow as well, because I would rather make the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 chunks than the $3,000, $4,000